What is up, Level Up Nation? As you can tell live on Twitch, I still have it set up for the interview last Thursday. It is Monday, April 12th. I have it fixed now. And welcome to Level Up Live, your home for gaming and esports news, brought to you by OTN Media. My name is Fiasco, and I am joined once again by the king of the courtside, Joey.
Oh, that's how we're going to end it. Hey!
No, I was going to draw it out.
What note we were going to end that on. John, I have to say, I like the fact that you type mic check 1212 over there in chat. I'm sure the chat is just giving you resounding monitoring on that mic.
Look, at the end of the day, we need to make sure all of our levels are fine-tuned. We need to make sure everything sounds good, whether it's on Discord, whether it's on Twitch, whether it's on the podcast down the road, whether it's in Discord chat, pardon me, Twitch chat, Joey. I need to make sure the mic levels are beautiful as always. That's how this works, right? No?
Oh, that's a fresh new haircut you're sporting over there as well.
Oh, stop. Yeah, I got my haircut before the show. Leave me alone. Nation, make sure you follow the show on Twitter and Facebook. Joey, stop complimenting. You're going to make me blush on air. Follow the show on Twitter and Facebook at LvLUp Live. That is at LvLUp Live. And while you're on Twitter, you can follow Joey's little flirtatious ways with my new haircut. Follow him at Courtside King. I do not post pictures of my new haircut on Twitter. Sorry, you're going to have to go to Instagram for that one. And myself at Fiasco on Twitter as well. And Nation, did you realize that there is a podcast version of the show? If for whatever reason you cannot join us here live on Twitch, the LvLUp Podcast is available. And it's available on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. And since you're listening to the podcast version of the show, I'm going to ask you one more favor, one small little favor, and that's to leave us a really awesome review and leave us some comments, leave us some details, what you like, what you don't like. We're here to make this show what you, our listeners and viewers, want, so leave us a review. Tell us your feedback, and we'll be more than happy to finagle the show in certain directions to make sure you get the content you are looking for. All right, Joey, it's Monday. We're coming off an amazing interview with BBXH there last Thursday. Guys, if you did not catch that interview, first off, you need to go back and watch the VOD. It's here on Twitch. It's on our YouTube channel also. Dee is an absolutely fantastic person. She is super positive, and she is the definition of a professional streamer with amazing entertainment value. She's great at the game she plays, her entertainment that she brings, and she's super positive. If you're looking for a positive influence in your life every morning, first off, she wakes up way too early to play video games. I'm not going to fault her for that. But tune into her stream, BBXH on Twitch as well. Super positive, a lot of fun stuff going on there as well. But please check out that interview. It was really, really cool. A lot of insight into how to become a streamer, how to grow your stream, and also a topic that we can all work on is how to deal with toxicity in our life, not just in video games, not just on Twitch, but in general, the best way to go about handling that adversity we face also. So definitely check that out. Joey, it is Monday, which means it's time for another edition of Level Up Live, which means it's time for you to list what in the world we are talking about today.
Well, John, also, do we have a YouTube link for chat over here as well? I don't know if we have one set up yet or not.
Joey, of course not. I will work on that as you're giving out the topics. Perfect.
We'll get that posted for you guys live with us here on Twitch. As far as topics go, John, we have quite a bit to cover tonight. Slight bit of roster moves, not too much there. Then we're going to dive a bit into some investments, how some companies are faring during the pandemic, and what that could mean for us as gamers moving forward throughout the rest of 2021. And we're going to dive into a new article that came out about Naughty Dog, as well as the way Sony's approaching some of their IPs and some of their development studios. So diving into that, we're going to talk a little bit more about Outriders as well and how that game continues to do now that the servers are, let's say, playing a little bit nicer with the players at this point. A few other things here, the Age of Empires fan preview. We had LCS and LEC playoffs and much more.
All right, Joey, that was not enough time for me to finish putting that new Nightbot command in, so we're just going to do it live during the show. Joey, we have our topics, but that does not mean we can start the show. No, Joey, it does not whatsoever. It means we have to go to our next segment, which is a personal favorite of mine, and of course, that is the Drink of Choice segment, where we, for a brief moment, get to talk about a beverage that relieves us from adulting and helps us with the show. Joey, your beverage for... oh my gosh, the 234th time, sir.
Yeah, it's been a minute, and I am celebrating the Overwatch League this week. It does return, so I'm drinking my last sip of Justice, that good old partnership there between the Washington Justice, based out here in Washington, go figure, and DC Brow. So excited to have that again on the show tonight.
Joe, I'm going to show you up, and I apologize.
Hey.
Once again, I'm not going to be able to pronounce any of this. The vintage is 2017, so it is a 4-year-old beautiful wine here from just north of Bordeaux, France, is where this great wine is coming from. If I spoke French, I would be able to tell you more about this. Apparently, it pairs well with red meat. That's about the only thing I can see. And the Surgeon General warning on the back saying not to drink and drive, which you don't need the government to tell you that. You shouldn't be drinking and driving regardless. So I have my fancy French wine, and you have your sip of justice, which I feel like that balances each other out pretty well, right?
Yeah, we'll take it. We'll take it. A little lager action and some wine. Why not?
Yeah, why not? Joey, we have our topics. We have our drinks. We have an amazing show in store for LvLUp Nation. So let's jump right into it. Let's go right into gaming and esports news.
Absolutely, good sir. Let's kick it off with some roster moves and talking Valorant. Fnatic has added Magnum and Durke, I believe is how it's pronounced, to their Valorant squad, replacing TSAC and Mo after a string of poor performances from the squad. Something that's not new in CSGO, something that's not new in esports. If a player is performing poorly or if a team is performing poorly, that organization typically looks to either completely revamp the roster or look to bring new blood into that roster. With Fnatic here, they had a roster that was very young. They brought in these players. They performed pretty well up front, but then after a couple of performances, they started to falter. They started to not qualify for majors that they should probably qualify for. In the end, Fnatic has decided to part ways and said, hey, guys, we're going to move you to the bench. You guys have the option to talk to whoever you want to. So those players are investigating different opportunities to leave that organization for another org to continue playing. But in the midterm, we are going to see Magnum and Durke come in to fill those rest of those spots. Overall, they're doing well, John. I think they're 6-0 so far as a squad with the new roster changes. They're not playing up against a G2 or a Team Liquid or a TSM or any of these super high caliber teams as of yet. But at the same point, coming out, getting those 6 wins early on, continuing to move your way through qualifiers is definitely not a bad position to be in, especially after really changing out 40% of your roster here.
So I'm still trying to get this freaking YouTube link done. All right, there we go, Joey. So you can go ahead.
Good old Nightbot. I think I can like directly post it in here too.
Yeah, well, so what I did was because Nation, look, I'm gonna call our Nation out here real quick, okay? Look, I understand we haven't been plugging our YouTube channel. I get it, right? But that doesn't mean you shouldn't be subbing to it, okay? Just because you didn't know about it doesn't mean you shouldn't be following and subbing to it. So Nation, we do not have one of those cool, fancy custom URLs for our YouTube channel as of yet. That requires people to follow on YouTube. So I'm going to ask you kindly, all 8 of your YouTube accounts that you have, because we all know no one just has just one, follow OTN Media. I'm going to go ahead and get that up here for you as well. Joey, so you posted the whole thing. I, sir, made a bit.ly for it, so there, it's a little
I think I have a bit.ly actually made on OTN's page. I probably could have just went there.
Too bad, so sad. It's already on there now.
So
anywho, yes, Joey. So the one thing you hit on, which is 100% correct, is the fact that CSGO really does have that high turnover rate. We were talking CSGO, right, or Valorant? I'm sorry.
Valorant, but I mean, they're both interchangeable in a sense.
Correct, yeah. So Valorant is kind of going along those same paths that we saw with CSGO. The constant roster changes. Now, the only difference is Valorant still trying to get its footing. Valorant is still trying to make its way into that mainstream when it comes to esports. Really, CSGO, when it comes to shooter esports, that's the golden standard. You could probably make an argument for CDL. Valorant really trying to make their footing, and it's being ran obviously by Riot, successful League of Legends all around the world. So you would imagine that they would have some kind of footing there. It's still a new game. We're going to see roster moves. It's not shocking to see Valorant kind of go down the same path that CSGO has gone down, where it feels like roster change after roster change after roster change. Look, at the end of the day, if you're an esports fan, if you're a sports fan in general, if you're a fan of anything that has an organized roster that can change, you should be used to these changes. Yes, it's a little more frequent in CSGO. We're starting to see a little bit more frequently in Valorant as well. A little more stability in League of Legends. A little more stability in Overwatch. Okay, I can't say that either because Overwatch has a ton of changes also. But it's not surprising, and Fnatic is going to do what they have to do to make sure they have a competitive squad. So this is not a surprise if you're a Fnatic fan. It's not a surprise if you're an esports fan. Fnatic wants to compete. They don't like being middle of the pack. They want to be top of the pack. They want to competing for a championship. So I think it's a smart move here.
Yeah, and I think they pulled the trigger at the right time as well. You look at some clubs or organizations who wait a little bit too long. Like, hey, we brought in this full young squad. They performed well. They're having a down period. Should we go ahead and just let them work through it? Should we take them out and change up some roster things here and there? In the end, I think Fnatic probably made the right decision here to make some changes early on. Again, it's a new scene. Valorant is still out there. It's still kind of developing itself, but you don't want to wait too long. I think there is some, I guess, bonus or pro to leaving those players together, allowing them to continue to work through the obstacles together. And that's happened before in the past. It's worked out in a positive way for some teams, but for other teams, it's ended up making that transition longer and longer. It's ended up making that roster really become a little bit disoriented throughout time as well. So I think making the moves here is good. Again, young players coming in. You're coming into a squad that's already 60% full. You now have the ability to adapt a little bit early on in the scene while it's still developing. I think this is like the second European Championship coming up for this particular season. So as that scene develops, now you can develop that talent along with it. And I think overall, it's a little hard for some Fnatic fans to take here early on with such a quick change, but I think it will probably be for the best later. Okay, over to some partnerships and investments. According to Reuters, Ubisoft has been struggling in comparison to publishers like EA and Activision during the pandemic. They currently have an operating margin of about 20%, whereas EA is sitting at 34% and Activision at 60% in comparison. So the big thing here is the in comparison part. 20% is not a terrible operating margin. We're talking about struggling, but it's struggling in comparison. This is not a company that's looking at bankruptcy. This is not a company saying we have to have a big hit in the next Assassin's Creed. They'll be perfectly fine if they don't. If Watch Dogs doesn't have a great hit, that's fine. If Rainbow Six Quarantine or Parasite or whatever the heck it ends up being called comes out and isn't a big hit, Ubisoft will be all right. It's a 20% operating margin, so I don't think people need to go crazy over that. I think the bigger thing is right now we're in almost a golden age of gaming. Like we see so many companies surging. Xbox has been in the news a ton. Sony has won Game of the Year like 3 or 4 years in a row, it feels like. You look at stuff like Activision, who is winning over and over, continuing to bring in great revenue. Yeah, you can argue the Overwatch League has struggled a little bit here and there, but overall, they've continued to see growth in certain areas. You look at some of these other different areas as well in gaming, and overall, the revenue, whether it be from cloud gaming, console gaming, PC gaming, the Nintendo Switch that sells ungodly amounts month after month, even though no one can find one anyway, it still sells. Overall, gaming is doing extremely well. So I think that's why we see this being brought up more than anything. Again, I don't think it's a reason to worry. If you do want to look at one area, though, with this in comparison, this could make Ubisoft a little bit more of an acquirable target for some of these companies like a Microsoft or like a Sony or an EA or a Tencent, someone looking to potentially acquire more publishers. This does allow Ubisoft to kind of find a little bit more ground in that area as they're a little bit more, let's say, susceptible, I guess, to a potential acquisition, or maybe more open to it as well because of that operating margin. So that is one thing to keep in mind. Again, they're not in any dangerous trouble with the 20% margin, but it does possibly open them up to be a little bit more of an acquisition target as well.
Now, I'm going to tell you why I don't like this comparison. When you take a look at Ubisoft versus EA and Activision, EA has one thing that is not fair when you can compare it to any other publisher. And that is every single sports title they have under EA Sports, because it's almost a guarantee. A new one's going to come out every year. You're going to have people that are going to buy it every year, regardless of how minuscule changes you put into the game. You have Ultimate Team that is going to have people pumping out dollar after dollar after dollar, if not even more. Activision Blizzard. You have World of Warcraft, the most successful MMORPG in the world, with its monthly subscription that just recently changed its sub time. Now, yeah, it's still $15 per month reoccurring if you want to do it that way, but if you just want to buy solid game time, you have to buy 60 days worth of game time now. But that's been going on for years. Tons of people playing that. Microtransactions there as well. You take into account Call of Duty and everything else there that comes out every single year that people buy every single year regardless. Then you have Ubisoft. I just don't think that it's a very fair comparison. When Ubisoft's like staple games take 3-4 years to develop the next version of it versus EA and Activision, that can just essentially build onto what they already have, or just essentially recycle 98% of last year's game, sprinkle a little fairy dust on top of it, and call it a brand new game. I do understand Ubisoft is struggling, and a lot of developers are, especially during COVID. That does make sense. Does it make them more acquirable, more desirable? I think so. I do. Ubisoft is a very strong name. I think that makes sense. I just have a problem with the comparison. I just don't think it's a fair comparison when you put them up against Activision and EA.
It's a little funky too, because you look at the nature. I don't have the exact values of EA and Activision in front of me, but I know Square Enix and Ubisoft are both around that 6 to 9 million mark. So when we're looking at potential acquisition targets, they come up quite a bit just because they're, again, it's not super affordable, but it's kind of in that Bethesda range, which we saw Microsoft spend earlier in the year. So with that in mind, again, as you said, John, it's a very different comparison. EA being a much bigger publisher, having those sports titles, Activision, Blizzard. You mentioned World of Warcraft, but just Call of Duty alone is such a big title in and of itself that it just continues to be growth upon growth year over year with their releases. Now you have Warzone as well. So on top of all those yearly Call of Duty, these annual releases, you also have Warzone competing right up there with battle royales like Fortnite. So continuously a very different comparison as we see these compared over and over. But again, Ubisoft, a 20% margin is not the end of the world again. So even if you remove the comparison altogether and just say a 20% margin, it's not a terrible spot to be in. So they're not in any kind of trouble. You're not going to see Ezio slash his blade for the last time in Assassin's Creed. They'll be perfectly fine. But it is one thing to keep an eye on, potentially for an acquisition later down the road. Over to Epic Games. Epic Games lost $181 million in 2019 and then $273 million in 2020. John, is this the end of Epic Games? Is this the end of Fortnite Battle Royale? It's had a new chapter. It's had a couple new chapters. It's had some great partnerships, but Epic is losing money on their game store. Is this the end?
No, it's not. Fortnite alone is bringing over $300 million a month, okay? Everyone knew when Epic launched their own, essentially their competition going up against Steam, this had to happen. And what's the number one thing Epic Games has been doing to try to attract people to buy from their store? Free games. Joey, how many free games have you and I downloaded, it feels like on an every other week basis, or whatever rotation it is for Epic Games? Games where I may not have wanted to pay $20 or $30 or $40 to try, but Epic Games is saying, hey, we want you to play off of our store. We're going to give you a free download, and who knows, we might be able to win your business or some of your business by going through our store by offering you this free game. It's a genius marketing tactic, especially when your one free-to-play game is bringing in over $300 million a month. This is nothing. Like, yeah, at the end of the day, it's $181 million in 19 and $273 million in 2020. Yeah, Joey, to you and me, I'd be sitting here crying myself to sleep if I lost that kind of money, mainly because I don't have that kind of money. But for Epic, it's not a big deal. Again, they lost not even what they make in a full month from Fortnite. It's like, yeah, okay, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. You give away free games. You have to buy those licenses. I guarantee you, EA is not giving away free copies of Battleground to Star Wars Battleground for free. They're not giving away all these games for free. No, the cost is coming somewhere. It's coming from Epic, so it makes sense. It's definitely not the end of Epic. It's not even close.
Yeah, absolutely. So everyone worrying on Twitter, again, with the whole Ubisoft thing, similar here with Epic, they're both perfectly fine. You guys can calm down. They are a billion-dollar company in a sense here. Epic is making a ton of money. So in that same time, we're going to round up even, John. So let's say 2019 to 2020, throughout those 2 years, they lost $400 million, slightly above what they actually lost on revenue here as far as the Epic Game Store goes. In that same time, they made $4 billion. And this is according to a document they just filed in their case against Apple. So $4 billion coming in, you're spending about $400 million going out. Guys, they are perfectly fine. They're making plenty of money. On top of that, like we mentioned, Fortnite is huge. Everyone knows Fortnite. You're having great collaborations here and there, whether who is paying, regardless, they're pulling in players time and time again. But on top of that, they have Unreal Engine 2, guys. Like Unreal Engine 4 is so popular out there. So many games are designed in Unreal. You have Unreal Engine 5 coming out soon as well. Yes, Fortnite was taken off the Apple Store. Oh, darn. They're going to lose some revenue there. They'll be okay. Epic Games still makes plenty of money. Same thing with Riot Games. A lot of these companies, regardless, if you see a little loss of revenue here and there, it's typically not the end of the world for big publishers like this. Now, if we're talking an indie studio, if an indie studio is spending an ungodly amount of money to put out some kind of free DLC or something, it's a different case because obviously their margins are a lot different than something like an Epic, like an Apple, like a Take-Two, all these bigger companies out there. In this case, like John said, it's really not the end of the world. Epic is coming into a tough environment. They're coming into a spot where Steam pretty much owns the majority by a hefty margin. If you game on PC, some of you might use the Windows Store, the Microsoft Store. Some of you may use Origin or the Activision launcher, etc. And a couple people use multiple launchers. But overall, if you're looking at a big storefront on PC, most people are choosing Steam over Epic and over the Windows or Microsoft Store. I don't even know what it's actually called on PC, one of those two. So most people are going with Steam. So how do you come in here? How do you take some of that margin back? Well, when we saw it with Mixer and Microsoft jumping into that market up against Google's YouTube and Amazon's Twitch, they tried to do it by buying out big streamers. They pulled over Ninja. They pulled over, I think it's King Gothaline was another one. Shroud was another one. So they started spending money on these big streamers, hoping their audiences would move from the Twitch platform over to Mixer. Didn't quite work out for them in the end. They saw a little bump here and there, but in the end, it wasn't enough traffic. Epic is trying a similar strategy, but a little bit more on the software side. Instead of pulling personalities to their store to represent it, they're pulling games themselves. They're giving away free games, and they're also pulling in exclusive launches. So like Kenna Bridge of Spirits is one of the big games that's coming out for PlayStation. It's been delayed a couple times, but it's set for fall 2021. Epic said, hey, we're going to get exclusivity on that. We're going to pull a game that looks great like Kenna, and you're going to have to get it on Kenna. It's not going to be available on Steam. But on top of that, while you're here, just pick up this free game, whether it be Battlefront, like Star Wars Battlefront 2 or whatever it is that week. So they're going to spend money. They're going to continue to pull people over. And then eventually players like John and I are going to look at both of our libraries and be like, wow, I have 30 games in my Steam library, but I also have all these 30-some games in my Epic library that have been free that I haven't even paid for. So then it starts becoming a decision. Well, do I want to buy that game on Steam just because I like Steam, or do I just play it over here because it's already free on Epic and I've already got a free DLC coupon or whatever, because Epic gives everything away, it feels like. So I think more players are going to come up with that decision in their mind. And again, the revenue is not an issue here. Just like Ubisoft, it's not the end of the world for Epic. They're going to be perfectly fine, to all those freaking out on Twitter.
Yeah, and also at the end of the day, Joey, you and I are kind of like the anomaly here. Like, we use multiple launchers. Like, if the game is going to be free on Epic, you and I are not dumb. We're going to take the free copy of the game. We're not going to pay money if we don't have to. Some people don't think that way. Some people want to be like, oh, well, Epic Games is going to constantly give me free games, so I'm just going to switch over everything to Epic Games. And that's completely fine. That's your right as a consumer to do that. That is the bet that Epic is putting on you, the consumer, that you'd be willing to go all in. If you're a Fortnite player or you already have a good relationship with Epic, that's what they're banking on, that when you get off of the console and go on PC, or if you're on PC and you're enjoying Fortnite, that you're going to dive deeper into that Epic game ecosystem. That's their bet. Joey and I are not the kinds of people they're looking for. Okay, we're going to take the free game because it's a free game, and we just don't want to pay money. Yes, there's others of us out there too, but we're not the people they're looking for. They're looking for the people that are open to fully moving their entire library over into Epic. And a lot of people are doing it. Don't get me wrong. A lot of people are, especially when you move Rocket League over to Epic and you force everyone to have an Epic game ID when you play now, even off of Steam. Smart way to do it. You're forcing people onto that platform. Makes complete sense. So yeah, if you're going to make your move over, you might as well do it. There's a lot of really cool perks. Just like on Steam, your really cool perk is those really awesome sales that come up once or twice a year. And then you spend your entire paycheck, and then you try to figure out why everyone's crying at the dinner table. Well, Joey, that's because you spent all your money on that summer sale. Just saying.
Wow, that took a whole nother level of deep there at the end. Wow.
Got to keep on your toes.
Yeah, I mean, just to wrap that up as far as that, because, I mean, you guys know I'm a huge Microsoft and Xbox fan, and I love popping some Chivos, as we call them, the old achievements on Xbox. I'm not going to go out of my way to buy something from the Microsoft store just to get achievements. If it's on sale at Steam, or if more friends have it on Steam or whatever, I'm going to go over there. Same thing with Game Pass. If it's on Game Pass, and even though I might like Steam better for PC games, I'm going to take that free option or that discounted option or whatever. Now, I do buy games off Game Pass. If it's an indie dev and I really enjoyed the game, sometimes I'll purchase it to support the dev, even though I played it for free, because I might go back to it, or I might just want to support the dev, or maybe they drop some DLC I pick up. So I'll bounce around, just like John said. We're probably not the greatest example when it comes to exclusivity in this sense. Like, yeah, we have our biases towards certain things, but overall, John and I are willing to go different places to find a sale or to go play with friends or whatever the platform may end up moving us to for whatever reason. So in the end, we're not the greatest example, but again, the big story here, the summary For those of you guys worrying about Epic and this loss of revenue to the Epic Game Store, the Epic Game Store is far from dead. It is pulling in more and more players as it goes. People are picking up games. Our libraries here on LvLUp are growing because of the Epic Game Store. So we are very much open to playing on both platforms. We enjoy it, and we have no fear that Epic will be around for many years to come. Over to some other news. This is a little bit deeper, a little bit dirtier as well, John, and I'm curious to get some of your thoughts on this. So Naughty Dog is reportedly working on another The Last of Us remake, this time for the PS5. This came out in an article from Bloomberg's Jason Schreier. I believe I pronounced his last name right there. The same article dives into a bunch of different stuff as far as behind the scenes with the Sony studios right now. It dives a bit into Ben's studio with Days Gone. It dives into Naughty Dog. Visual Arts is another one that's discussed in there. Talking not necessarily about the dev working conditions, but some of the ways that IPs have been handled on the back end. Before we dive fully into that, John, what are your thoughts on Naughty Dog spending the time to make another The Last of Us remake? Pretty much, I believe the last one was just a couple years ago, maybe 5 to 10 years ago that the last remake was made.
You know, so here's the thing. This happens a lot. And I'm not going to use video games as the example. I'm going to use Hollywood as the example. There's a lot of reboots. There's a lot of remakes of movies, of shows, of books that may have been on TV that they're getting a reboot as a movie. People want to put a different, unique spin on it. Now, that being said, that normally happens after like 30, 40, 50 years. Can you imagine, Joey, if they like redid Star Wars episodes 4, 5, and 6? Like, ignore the fact that George Lucas has gone back and tinkered with 4, 5, and 6 using 21st century technology to add stuff here and there. But can you imagine if like some Joe Schmo, like 50 years after the original 4, 5, and 6 came out, said, you know what, I want to go ahead and reboot all of Star Wars, starting with 4, 5, and 6. One, Disney wouldn't let it happen, but two, like, you're kind of like, okay, well, it's been 50 years, you know, let's see what they'll do with it. This has been like, what, 7 years? Like, this game is still good. It is still a very solid game. Graphically, it's a very good game. The game plays well. It doesn't have many bugs. It just feels like an overall solid game that won many awards for a very good reason. And now we're going to go ahead and just remake it. Like, I just don't understand why. It feels like if you're going to put that much time and effort into a game, make it a new title, make it a sequel, make it, you know, do something different with it. Like, remakes, remasters are cool, but they can't come like 2, 3, 4, 5 years later. Like, the game has to age. And yeah, while technology has aged and technology's gotten better and these games could be better in present day, how much better could they be? I don't know. I really think that they're kind of missing the mark with this idea of remaking another A Last of Us after it's already been remade, and now they're going to do it. To me, it just doesn't make sense. I want to be a fly on the wall in the meeting where this idea came up, where they're like, hey, we already remastered The Last of Us. Let's go ahead and let's do it again. You know, shot in the dark here. Let's just do it again. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, this one's a mess for me as well. So the remastered version came out in 2014. So like John said, about 7 years ago is what it ends up calculating out to. It feels messy. Like, yes, it's a popular series. The Last of Us itself won Game of the Year when it came out. It won a ton of other awards as well. The Last of Us 2 this previous year won Game of the Year as well. So you look at the series, the franchise is doing extremely well. Whenever it comes out, it's critically acclaimed. It sells a ton of copies. It's a great game, and there's nothing wrong with that. The IP in and of itself has done extremely well. As John said, though, I'd rather see it built upon. Like, something that's going to be remastered, I think it needs to be out for a while before we do see that remaster. Maybe a new platform. Now, again, you can argue the PS5 is kind of that new platform. I don't know if I'd quite make that same argument since it's still new, since it's still so scarce out there as well. Now, I don't know the release date of this new game, so that could play into this a little bit if it's still a few years out. But overall, I would like to see something different. Like, give us The Last of Us 3, or give us a new IP, or dive something else. Like, maybe you take a break, you go into a new IP, you give us something different. Like, I think Uncharted is being remastered as well, or there's a new Uncharted game, but maybe something completely different, something that's not The Last of Us, something that's not Uncharted. Give us something completely new, and then say, hey, if that game goes extremely well, then you can decide, hey, I want to make a sequel for that. Or maybe at that point, a couple years down the line, you say, hey, we've spent some time away from The Last of Us, the IP, it's been dormant for 5 years or whatever. Let's go back and dive into it. Let's explore a side story or do something a bit different with it. Maybe even take a little bit more of an episodic route with certain aspects of the game. So I don't know. I don't like the idea that I have no issue with remasters. I think it comes down to what you said, though, John. It feels a little too early for one. But not only that, but the fact that it's a remaster of a remaster is in just like a 10-year span. It feels like too much. So I'm not the biggest fan of this. But it is a little bit of a deeper story. There is more to this overall. A couple other things that came out of this article. So in the same article, it was confirmed that despite being profitable, Days Gone will not receive a sequel either, possibly due to the critical reception. So this comes back to a lot of people saying, well, now Sony is not willing to make risks. They had this one studio, Visual Arts. They tried to go out there and do this Last of Us remake. They got it pulled away from them and moved back to Naughty Dog. Then you have the Days Gone guys. The game sold extremely well. People are happy with it, but the critics themselves were not happy with it. So Sony didn't get their glowing A+ rating or whatever on Metacritic. And now they're saying, hey, that game didn't do well enough. Even though it sold extremely well, it wasn't critically rated enough. We're not going to allow you to take the chance on that second game to give it a go. I mean, overall, I could take this a few different directions, but what are your thoughts on them taking this game that, again, it made a profit, it did well on the markets, it sold well, and players seemed to enjoy it, but critics themselves did not find it well? Do you like the fact that Sony is chasing the way the critics go, because obviously those are the games that win Game of the Year and different things like that, or do you prefer them to allow their developers to take more chances like Days Gone?
Critics are critics for a reason. Their whole job is to be that, critical. They are supposed to be able to look at something and find everything wrong with whatever they're watching. Movie critics. Joey, let me tell you about the number one group of people I just don't pay attention to. Movie critics. They have been wrong on so many things. Like, I don't care what, I've been watching movies since 1924. I don't care what this guy has to say about any like comedy that comes out in 2020 or 2021. I could really care less. If it's something that I enjoy, I'm going to spend my money to go watch it. Same thing with video games. They're critics for a reason. They're there with an agenda. Critics are there to say, hey, look, this is what I expect from this developer. This is their track record, so this is what I'm expecting. Did it hit this imaginary bar that me, the critic, came up with? If they didn't, they tear them apart. If they did or they exceeded it, then they praise it like crazy. Joey, how many games have we seen critics absolutely sing the praises of, and then 3 months after release, like, all the ratings tank because everyone thinks it's a terrible game? It happens all the time. I'm not gonna say all the time, but it happens more frequently than not. So it just, if you as a developer only pay attention to the critics and not the fact that the fan base is enjoying it. Last time I checked, the critics buy one copy. In fact, most of the time they don't even buy one copy. You give them a copy for free. So pay attention to the money coming in. Pay attention to what your community is saying, because if the community is happy with the game you put out and they're saying, yes, we would love to play a sequel, make a sequel. Who cares what the critics say? I guarantee you millennials and Gen Z are not going to be paying attention, to whatever Joe Schmo in PC Gamer or whatever rating magazine or online website puts out for that game. If they enjoy it, they're going to buy the title because they're already invested in the story. They're invested in that game. They're invested in the studio. They're not going to care too much what the critic says.
Yeah, and I think on the flip side of that as well, you mentioned like critics versus players. The other one to look at is Sea of Thieves. Sea of Thieves came out. It was terribly critically acclaimed. All the critics hated it. And honestly, I think rightfully so. I think the game launched with a very little content overall, but players loved it right from the start. Yes, some players were not as happy, but overall the ratings were doing extremely well with players, whether it be on Metacritic, whether it be on Steam reviews or whatever platform you're playing it on. They were doing really well. The players just really enjoyed the experience. It was just something new. It was a way to engage with their friends, engage with audiences, and just be something completely different from anything they played before. Critics are looking at it and saying, hey, it doesn't really have much of a campaign to it. There's not a ton of endgame content to it outside of Pirate Legend grind. It feels too grindy, which again, I think were rightfully said as critics. But the players also have a voice, and the players, however they want it to become, is something that's going to lead that game's development. And over time, players wanted a campaign. So did the critics. So what did Sea of Thieves do? They added in Tall Tales. So now you have some campaign elements. They've added in other companies for different ways to progress. They've added in the like mercenary flags. What's the name of those? Alliance flags, mercenary flags. You know what I'm talking about? The little flags. I don't remember the exact name of them, but there's little flags you can fly, and you can represent different mercenary companies and all of that. So in the end, there's different ways to speed up that progression to make that a little bit easier. And the other thing is all the daily patch or the monthly patches. They add in these monthly patches with different content, whether it be story-based or whether it be new ways to experience the environment or to play with friends. So over time, we've seen that game turn into something that critics hated and players loved, to now a game that is selling extremely well, still on Steam to today, years after it launched. And on top of that, you still see critics coming back and saying, hey, this is the best ongoing service game currently out there outside of something like a World of Warcraft. So it can change over time, and I think that's one thing that maybe PlayStation could be ignoring here. Now, again, Days Gone is not a live service game. Sea of Thieves is. So that is a very big difference in this comparison. But it is one of those things that, again, the game sold well, players enjoyed it, but it didn't do well critically. And at least for now, it seems like PlayStation is going to avoid those type of games.
And then,
so
also,
go ahead. Yeah.
On the flip side, take a look at Cyberpunk. Cyberpunk came out and everyone was giving it glowing ratings before it was released. We're talking Metacritic giving it almost a 90. A 90 from the limited demo that they played. They said it was going to be the game of a generation. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. And now, Joey, we're not even 6 months away from the game having been launched, and we're getting, a 50 gig patch because the game is so broken. Like, look, I get it. I'm known for hating on Cyberpunk, but there's a reason because of it. The critics absolutely said this game is going to be the best game that any gamer has seen in generations. Like, this game was supposed to be that game. The average rating from gamers who have played it, based on Metacritic's own website, is a high 60, low 70. They were off the mark by almost 20. You can't believe everything the critics say because they get it wrong, and they get it wrong often, and they definitely got it wrong on Cyberpunk.
Well, and maybe they don't get it wrong, but they have a different interpretation. Yeah. Like, again, players with the whole Sea of Thieves thing, players might enjoy that more than critics who are looking for that deep story, looking for that deep campaign, looking for that end game progression. And maybe that's not necessarily what players wanted in that sense. So that's one thing to keep in mind as well, is just critics are looking for one thing, players might be looking for another, and that's where some of those discrepancies come about. So again, guys, we could talk about this all night. There's really a ton more to dive into with this article, but we're not going to stay on it because there are other things to cover. Highly recommend you check out Jason's article on Bloomberg. It's going to dive into a bit more about why we see some people leaving Sony as well. Visual Arts, they've ended up leaving some of those big names over at that studio, Bend as well, and Sony Japan recently shutting down too. So again, Sony is not in a terrible place, just like Ubisoft, just like Epic Games, like we talked about earlier. Things like this happen, and there's going to be turmoil here and there. But overall, it is one of those things that we as gamers need to look at. Is Sony willing to take risk? How did we originally get games like The Last of Us or like Ghost of Tsushima, like Ratchet and Clank? They're willing to take risks at one point. And again, I'm not saying they're not willing to take risks now, but seeing certain studios like this shut down and not allowing their ideas to come through is something to at least keep in mind as a gamer as we look forward and how we choose to support these companies. At the end of its first week, Outriders was number 3 most played game behind Warzone and Fortnite on Xbox in most major markets. So why are we talking about this? Why is Xbox coming up? Yes, I am an Xbox fan. But the biggest reason, guys, is the Game Pass thing. John and I talked about it a couple weeks ago. One of these, it feels like this is a Twitter podcast, to be honest. One of the big things on Twitter was Game Pass is terrible for developers. Game Pass this, Game Pass that. It's a terrible thing for everyone. Okay, we got it. So we went through some of the engagement numbers. People are technically buying more games if they're subscribed to Game Pass. They're trying new games. The developer list to get on Game Pass is over 6 months long, guys. We can confirm that. It is a very long list to get onto Game Pass. Many, many people went on there. So the big thing here was now we have the first AAA game going to Game Pass. Outriders, Square Enix, they're going to launch it on Game Pass. It's not on PC, just on the console version. How is it going to do? Is it going to have good player engagement? Is it going to sell well? John, again, top 3 most played in most major markets. That's the United States, that's UK, that's Australia. Brazil is another big Xbox market that did extremely well with this game. So people are playing it. So the engagement numbers are high. It's free. Of course, they're going to be high. A lot of people are not going to argue that. Now, the other side of the coin is it's also the top selling game in almost all those markets. So not only are people playing it at high engagement levels up there with Fortnite and Warzone, but the game is still selling extremely well too. So I don't know if we need to spend a ton of time on this, but it is one of those things that just to mention. We mentioned it a couple weeks ago. Game Pass is doing fine. It's not killing off the sales of games. People are still buying games, and even games that maybe they're not buying, they are going back and buying DLC or they're spending microtransactions in. So at least for now, devs want to be on there, and Microsoft is willing to make those deals with devs to give them that guaranteed income up front. And so far, if we look at engagement numbers, even with a AAA game like Outriders, it is still doing pretty well.
Game Pass is just that cool new kid in your class that just moved in from California, Joey. The one that like fits like the stereotype of like, you know, like the surfer dude that comes into class and everyone's like, oh, I want to be friends with the new guy. He seems cool. That's Game Pass. Everyone wants to be on Game Pass. And I'm not going to say you want to be friends with a guy from California, you know, for this reason, but it's a good thing. People, you know, studios want to be on Game Pass. It provides a chance for your game to be exposed to millions of gamers that may or may not even have been interested in your title to begin with. And yes, psychologically speaking, someone is going to be willing to spend money on microtransactions on a free game because the game is free. If you're listening to the podcast, I gave the glorious air quotes because yes, the game is free, but congratulations, you have now been sucked into the microtransactions. So, you know, you end up paying more than you would for the game. But the whole thing is like, it makes sense. Now, obviously, Game Pass is a big thing for gamers. Gamers should be very happy with the Game Pass. PlayStation fanboys, shut up. I'm tired of it. I love Sony. I love PlayStation 2. Just get over it. The Game Pass is here, and it's a damn good deal. Just get over it. It's going to happen. Next step. You have your first AAA title, Joey. Congratulations on Game Pass. A real little round of applause for you there. Beat Fortnite. I want to see you beat Fortnite. I know it's a hefty order. But you know, Game Pass has the ability to be something absolutely massive. We talk about it every time that Microsoft devours a smaller developer. I'm sorry, acquires a smaller developer and brings them into the initiative. You know, it feels like every single time we talk about more and more talent coming to Xbox, coming to Game Pass, coming to the initiative, that bar gets higher and higher and higher and higher. So yeah, it's a good thing, and it's starting to pay off. Like, Joey, you have this Sony fanboy. I mean, I'm not a fanboy like those rabid people on Twitter. But, you know, I can sit here and tell you it's a great deal. You know, I have it for my PC. Sorry, I have a PlayStation 4. I don't own an Xbox, but I have Game Pass on my PC. Get over it. It's a stupid good deal. So it makes sense. Outriders is the number 3 most played game over the weekend at the end of the first week. I think that's fantastic. I want to see if it can sustain. And I feel like with it being on Game Pass, it has that ability to hold those numbers because, like you said, Joey, it's free to play. It makes sense. It makes sense. I want to see them go up against Warzone. I want to see them beat Warzone. And then I want to see them take on Fortnite. Can Outriders do it? I don't know.
Yeah, and I think the other question is we don't know how long it's going to be on the service. It could be on Game Pass for a year. It could be 6 months. It could be 1 month. We really don't know. They didn't give any kind of like, this is when it's leaving date. Usually those dates come out like maybe 2 weeks or so before the game actually leaves, or maybe the beginning of the month that it's going to leave at the end of the month. So that's another big factor to keep in mind here. Outriders, yes, is doing extremely well up front, but once it does end up eventually leaving Game Pass, does it sustain that playthrough? Now, it's not technically a live service game. They're doing balance changes that make it feel like a live service game, but it does have that completable campaign at this point. If they do add in DLC or some kind of more end game content, then maybe it ends up developing into some kind of live service game. And I think that's when the question mark will come through. A Destiny, for example, when it launched, would probably do extremely well on Game Pass. But once it eventually leaves the service, how many of those players are going to carry over and actually buy the game or actually continue playing on that game after it ends up leaving? So I think that's going to be also the big question here for Outriders to answer. So we'll keep an eye on that one for you guys. But next up is the Age of Empires fan preview event. This happened this past Saturday on April 10th. I did not get a chance to watch this live. And John, I don't believe you were able to either. But I have caught a few different previews. And they've dove a little bit into Definitive Edition for 2. They also looked at Age of Empires 3. And they're bringing, I believe, a new civilization in the United States. Fun fact for us Americans over here, that'll be entering in there. But we also got to see a little bit more of Age of Empires 4, which we haven't seen since like November 2019. Diving into a bit, graphically, it looked all right. I don't think it looked like the best graphics out there. I highly recommend watching it on the 4K version on YouTube. It looks very different than the other versions. Yeah, 4K versus da-da-da. But seriously, guys, the blades of grass and everything look extremely different. So highly recommend checking that out. We saw a couple different civs, John. One thing that also came out is that it'll be launching with 8 civilizations. That to me feels a little bit small, to be honest, for a game that's been in development for so long, as well as a series that's been around for so long as well in Age of Empires. Now, I guess the counter argument to that, and you'll probably bring this up, is StarCraft. StarCraft is looking at a game that's been around for very long and is probably one of the most successful RTS games out there, and it only has 3 races. So maybe 8 is fine for a launch. Maybe we see more come later on through DLC like we see with like Civ 5 and Civ 6. But for me, 8 did feel a little bit small for a big announcement like this.
I can see that. I really can. I think the average gamer will look at this and say, just 8? I only have 8 to choose from. If you're a Civ player, you're 100% correct. Civ 6 is like what, on expansion pack number 3, and they have like over 20 civilizations you can choose from. So yeah, I can totally understand why people would think 8 is small. So here's my thing. Age of Empires was originally a game that was known for its story mode. Yes, there was an online component to it, but it was able to tell a story of a civilization through different chapters, through different historical moments, now re-rendered as best to our ability through history in a video game. And that was kind of a big thing. Like the whole thing was the campaign. Kind of like in StarCraft, yes, there is the online version of the game, the multiplayer version of the game. At the end of the day, the bread and butter of StarCraft was the story, with the cinematics, with the cutscenes, telling this elaborate story of human survival, of Protoss survival, of Zerg domination. And that's kind of like what Age of Empires does, is it tells the story of these civilizations. You know, how did these civilizations get to where they are today in the historical context? And I think it's, you know, I think when you look at it that way, 8 civilizations is actually quite a lot. If you go down and say they each get 10 chapters, that's 80 chapters that they have to develop of being able to tell a story. Yes, if you solely focus on the multiplayer aspect of the game, 8 is not a lot to choose from. But like you said, Joey, I think it's a very valid point you brought up, and I would have brought it up. If StarCraft had 3 and has done well, continues to do well online with people still wanting to play it, I really think people will come around on the number 8, and I really do think Age of Empires will release more civilizations in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely not going to end at 8. There'll be more DLC, whether it be free or whether it be paid, it will be available. Speaking of campaigns, they did tease one of the campaigns as well. That is the Norman campaign. It will tell the story of Duke William of Normandy as he wrestles control of England from King Harold, starting at the Battle of Hastings, then later following his descendants Robert, William II, and Henry I as they continue that fight through modern-day England, it looks like. Because that's how you do with Age of Empires. You go through the different ages, that Bronze Age, Iron Age, Imperial Age, all of that good action. They showed a couple other things. They teased naval combat as well. And I think one of the things, and again, I haven't played Age of Empires in a very long time, but I believe they're diving into the unique mechanics of civilizations more as well. So one of the things you got when you played these different civs back in like Age of Empires 2 was if John played as the Chinese, he would end up with some kind of unique unit and some kind of unique really a building or some kind of assortment of building or technology, depending on the different civilization you chose. It seems like this one, they're going to add a lot more uniqueness to it. So like one of the civs, for example, is the Moguls. You're going to be able to pack up your base completely and just move it. So there's going to be like a little bit of a charge time or whatever to pack it up. But similar to like the Terran and StarCraft, where they can just move their command center, you're going to be able to lift off, and not necessarily lift off like in space, like in StarCraft, but you're going to be able to pack up, throw them into wagons, and move your base around to give that mobility. So they're going to be a little bit of a weaker race up front, but they have that mobility to be really strategic with it. And I think looking at the different races, once we know those unique appeals to each and every one of them, they're going to bring some new tactics, some strategies that'll really build into the gameplay elements here and possibly make it a little bit more of a reason for having only 8 versus more, because those 8 are so unique in comparison to one another.
Yeah, and you know, we kind of see that in Civilization. Civ 6, Civ 5 still being a very popular game as well. Every distinct nation had a distinct unit, a distinct advantage, a distinct building, or you know, whatever kind of boost that they got. Take Civ 6 for example. Korea, they have a science bonus when you build a science district next to a mountain. So if you play the Korean civilization in Civ 6, you're obviously going to go for a science win. Like that's what the Korean civilization is set up for. That's kind of the same thing here in Age of Empires. Is you're going to have these unique units, you're going to have these unique abilities, these unique buildings, and that's kind of the beauty of it. That's how that's how humanity developed, was through these different nations. They all learned something different. Joey, the jet engine that we use in airplanes was developed by Germany, not by America. Like, fun fact, that jet engine is now used worldwide by every single country in the world. So, you know, that's the story. That's one of the cool things. That's why these civilizations in Age of Empires have these unique buildings, traits, units, is because that's how humanity developed. And this is truly a history game for people who enjoy history, because it goes back and brings those small differences to the light and show how it's benefited humanity and how we benefit from it today.
Absolutely. So guys, keep an eye out on that. We also got a tentative release date. Again, everything's tentative with COVID. It can always change. But for now, as of this past weekend, they have announced fall 2021 as the release of Age of Empires 4. So keep an eye out on that. Again, it'll probably be on Game Pass. It'll probably be on Steam, all of those different platforms. It is not coming to Xbox consoles, which some people are up in arms about. My argument would be, have you ever really seen too many Age of Empire games on console? No, not really. So then the counter argument is, well, it has mouse and keyboard support. So they've gone back and forth on that. We'll see if they eventually port it to console, but at least for now, it's looking like fall 2021 for a PC release. No console release mentioned as of yet. Heading over to some leaks that came out this past weekend, and then we're going to dive a little into some upcoming stuff and then wrap things up with some League of Legends action and esports. A Bloodborne remaster is rumored to be coming to PC and PlayStation 5 soon, developed by QLock and Blue Point Games. This one's rumored to be coming to Steam as well, which is a bit of a surprise because most PlayStation games well, it depends how you look at it. Horizon Zero Dawn was a PlayStation Studios game that came to Steam. Since then, Sony has invested money into Epic Games. So you see other exclusive games coming to the PlayStation platform also coming to Epic Games. Kenna Bridge of Spirits, we mentioned earlier, is one of those games. There's a couple other ones out there, and I don't know how those deals are structured necessarily, but a lot of people were linking Epic Games with PlayStation. At least if this leak ends up being true about this remaster coming, it does sound like Steam will be one of those platforms included. Jumping over to the competitor in Steam of that Epic Games Store, according to popular Valve leaker Tyler McVicker, Valve is trying to get Microsoft to integrate Xbox Game Pass for PC into Steam as well. John, I think this would be a great move. I think one of the things to look at would be that revenue model. If Game Pass is on Steam, does Steam get a cut if someone subscribes to Game Pass through Steam? How does that end up looking? Or is Steam purely looking to get those user numbers so they can go into their revenue reports and say, hey, quarterly earnings report, we have this many users compared to Epic Games? And I think that could be a reason too. I'm sure money is involved in some way or another. Another thing to look at though is the Microsoft Store. People do not like using the Microsoft Store on PC. I like Xbox. I hate the Microsoft Store. The download times are slow. The update is not super convenient. So I would much rather prefer to download through Steam as well. So I, as a gamer on PC, would really like this preference to become a thing with Game Pass being accessible on Steam. At the same point, I could see if there is money involved, Microsoft doesn't really want to cut up their cut of what they're getting from those monthly subs. Yeah,
I think this would be a smart move for both parties. Microsoft can save money in regards to how they, like, the reason why it's so slow is because I'm pretty sure the servers that Microsoft have aren't really built for like mass downloads by millions of people, mass updates by millions of people, like you see from Steam, where it effectively pushes out patches on a daily basis for millions of games, it feels like. Now, I could be completely wrong. It is Microsoft, after all. Who knows? But based upon experience and how slow they are at everything when it comes to downloading, it just makes sense. Put it on Steam. Yeah, there's going to have to be a cut. But for Steam, now you get more users on your platform. And because, like we said, Epic Games is giving away free games, a lot of people are switching over to Epic Games. That is a very big competitor now for Steam and Valve. It makes sense. You put Game Pass out there. Now you have access to that Game Pass catalog. Thousands and thousands of games for $9.99 or $12.99 or whatever it costs for PC. That just makes sense. Even if they were to raise the price a bit to buy it through Steam, let's say $15.99 or $14.99. We'll say $15 flat here, right? Or let's say they raise it up to $20, $19.99 a month. That way, Microsoft still gets their cut and Steam still gets their cut and so on and so forth. That's still a good deal for thousands and thousands of games. I'm sorry, that one free game from Epic may not be enough to sway me over there anymore if I can pay $20 and get access to thousands and thousands of games through Xbox Game Pass through Steam. I think it'd be even bigger for Steam than it would be for Microsoft. I think Microsoft fans would be happier that they don't have to go through the Microsoft store anymore. And they can go to Steam. A lot of people are familiar with Steam, but I feel like Steam would be the bigger winner in this situation.
Yeah, I feel like it could be a win-win overall, though. Like, I still know people who have no idea what Game Pass on PC is. They still think it's just a console-only service. So they're out there buying all these games, and they're like, how do you have all these games? You only pay, what, $10 a month? And it's because of Game Pass. And again, part of that's that visibility. Microsoft has spent a ton on marketing, and they've done a pretty good job in that area. They're at like 20 million subscribers at this point. But overall, there's still people out there of the 3 billion gamers or whatever that Microsoft always talks about that do not know about the service. So I think that is one way to get that name out there a little bit more. But again, Steam, having all those Game Pass players go through their platform is a huge win for them as well. They can knock that onto their user numbers. They can throw the discounted rate out there for people who actually buy the game via their platform. So a lot of wins that could go either direction depending on what the final details of that deal end up being, if it even happens, and if this rumor ends up being true. So again, guys, just a rumor on that one, but definitely a possibility. Last rumor to hit on here, 10 years after being a Xbox 360 remastered port, GoldenEye was canceled. Well, Don Jacques LLC has re-registered a new GoldenEye trademark, guys. So we could see this one coming to an Xbox platform here soon. They've redone it for entertainment software with a sighting of consoles, PC, and mobile devices, which seems to go kind of in that Xbox wheelhouse of releasing on Xbox consoles, PC platform, and mobile via xCloud. So there's a high possibility this does mean an Xbox move made there. Now, again, GoldenEye is a bit funky the way it all shakes out, because you have the 007 rights, then you have Rare who worked on the game, you have Nintendo involved, and then Don Jacques over here as well. So with everyone all together, the final person who did not sign off last time was Don Jacques. Now that they've renewed the IP, the trademark is all good to go. A lot of people are thinking this could mean that Microsoft does have the ability to use that IP, whether it be a port of the original 007 game that was on N64, or if we do see some kind of new GoldenEye game coming to the Xbox platforms. That is one to keep an eye on. Hopefully we'll hear something around E3. If not, maybe a little bit farther down the road.
Do it. I dare you. I dare you.
I freaking love the original GoldenEye.
I love GoldenEye. Like, yeah, compared to graphics nowadays, it's funky as anything. But dude, back then, like, Joey, tell me, how many arguments did you get into with your friends playing split screen for people like screen watching your box? Like when you're like playing, like you're like, oh, there's no way you knew where I was hiding. I was crouched behind a box and I'm playing as Oddjob. There's no way you knew I was there. You were screen watching, and then the controller gets thrown. Mom gets called in. She comes in, not with orange slices and a high C or anything like that, but she comes in to rain justice from above. It feels like. To keep the kids from yelling about GoldenEye. But yeah, Joey, I am so hyped. If GoldenEye gets a remake, if it's see, look, this is a prime example of how you do a remake. Okay, when did GoldenEye come out on N64, Joey? Like,
oh god,
in the mid 90s, I think.
Mid 90s, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, it's 2021. Okay, it's been like 30 years. this is the time you do a remake. You just heard me say the graphics back then, but now, they could be a lot better. This is when you make a remake, not 5-6 years after you made the last one. Perfect timing to do it. This is a perfect example of when to pull out a remake.
So it looks like it was originally made in 1997. I was going to guess 98, so right around there. And then again, this was about 10 years when Xbox tried to end up making this one. So that would have put us at about 2011 when they tried to port that over to Xbox 360, which again, I think that's enough time as well for a remake. Now it's been a very, very long time. So something like this would be super welcome, especially with those nostalgic gamers like John and I who would love to dive back in, especially if it includes split screen. Can you imagine doing some kind of LAN party with split screen nowadays?
No.
Like, yes, I would love to do it online multiplayer, and I think that would be great. But just imagine a bunch of people getting together, playing split screen. It would bring back all those memories, all that craziness that happened with the screen peeking. I don't know. It would be a good time in my opinion, but we'll have to keep an eye on that. Again, all we know for now for certain is that the trademark has been renewed. We don't know exactly what it means. It could, in some way it's going to be some kind of game. If it's entertainment software, we don't know who it goes to. The estimate here, at least within the industry, sounds like Xbox at the moment. Upcoming, Hi-Rez's popular shooter Rogue Company, available on the Epic Games Store. That is still doing very well out there, Twitter. Has a patch dropping tomorrow, which includes a new map, Rooftops, a new game mode, Dodgeball, and a new event, Arms Dealer, and more. So if you guys are Rogue Company fans, go ahead and check that out. Patch drops, I believe, tomorrow morning. I want to say 7 a.m. Eastern time. Don't quote me on that. And that is going to be Tuesday, April 13th for all you listening on the podcast. Capcom has confirmed that their next digital broadcast will take place on April 15th at 6 p.m. Eastern time, and it will focus on Resident Evil Village. So we've got a few of these guys. What are we expecting? Are we expecting another tall, vampire, ghosty-looking woman? I don't know. It's a possibility. But one thing you can't expect is a new trailer. You're going to see some new gameplay as well. And on top of that, I've heard there's a surprise or two that could be waiting too. So keep an eye out for that. Again, April 15th, 6 p.m. Eastern time. Last but not least, Overwatch fans, Overwatch League is returning to action this week. It is kicking back off on April 16th at 3 p.m. Eastern time. John, you and I, we don't have a Justice match just yet, so we're going to have to wait for our hometown fanhood here to go into full bloom. But at the same point, Overwatch League is back. It's going to be great to see those teams back in action, to see who is going to be that top team again this year, because the Shock have done extremely well the last couple of years, and I'm curious if another team's going to be able to top them here.
Joey, I'm not biased or anything, but did you see that hype video they put out today?
I did. It was wonderful.
Full of Washington Justice. Look, I'm just going to throw this out there. That team looks good. That team looks good. Do not sleep on the Washington Justice. I'm not saying that because I'm here in DC. I'm not. Anyone with two eyes can look at that roster and say this roster is going to bring some pain. Not to DC fans. They're going to bring some pain to the Overwatch League because people are going to be like, what happened to the Justice? They got good, kid. That's what happened. And they're going to be smacking some fools around in Overwatch League. So I'm pumped for it. We do have to wait another week to see our Justice kickoff, but I am excited for Overwatch League action returning this week.
Absolutely. So if you guys want to check out that Overwatch League action, April 16th at 3 p.m. Eastern time is when that first match is going to return. And then it'll just keep going from there with some great Overwatch action throughout the summer. Get stoked because the Overwatch League is back. Last but not least on the agenda today is to talk about some League of Legends because we had the LEC Finals and the LCS Finals this past weekend. John, these were crazy. Not only do we have some great action, some creative drafts, some fun action between these two teams or these two leagues out there and the two teams within them, but we got to see some new blood as well. The LEC, did G2 win it? Did Fnatic win it? Neither one made it. For the first time in EU LCS or LEC history, G2 or Fnatic has not been in the finals. In fact, it was Mad Lions and Rogue who ended up making it there. Mad Lions taking out G2 in a best-of-5 previously, and then Rogue with a win over G2 as well. To move on to face the Mad Lions, Rogue heads up in the series. They are up 2-0, but then the Lions roar. John, they come back strong. They take game 3. They take game 4, and then the Lions stand up on Pride Rock. Look out at the Shadowlands and hoist the trophy as they go on to win 3-2. Mad Lions over Rogue. Reverse sweep here, John. Silver Scrapes, we had it all. This was some of the best LEC finals I have ever seen. Again, a huge Fnatic fan, as you guys can tell back here. I think Fnatic has had some great games, G2 as well. But both these two young teams coming out, proving the veterans that they are potentially going to take down the Kings of Europe in G2 and Fnatic, doing it here and then giving us an amazing series on top of that. What a great final.
I honestly think Rogue and Mad Lions are putting the LEC on notice. For the past several years, and this is not a shot at the veteran players, but for the past several years, we have seen just a rotation of veteran going from team to team to team to team, and new talent, Fnatic being one of the exceptions here, not afraid to pull up young talent and plug them into a lineup with 4 veterans, or plug 2 in with a lineup with 3 veterans. It's mainly a lot of the smaller, younger organizations that are taking those chances on that young talent, and it's really starting to pay off. It's kind of like one of the things I liked about Cloud9 in North America is that they weren't afraid to develop talent and plug them into the roster. 2 years ago, Cloud9 still had several pieces of the original roster on that team. Now there's no original Cloud9 player on that team in the LCS. And, you can make an argument that's a good thing. We saw how TSM and Liquid struggled in years past with Doublelift and Bjergsen that have been around forever. Again, not saying they can't compete, but just saying, it's gotten to the point now where we become so hyper-focused on the superstar that we neglect the young talent. And this is what we're seeing. Mad Lions and Rogue, not afraid to go young, not afraid to refine that talent, and coming out and putting G2 and Fnatic on notice. Yeah, you can say COVID. Yeah, you can say there's other things that went in there. It wasn't on stage. It wasn't in front of a live audience. Things do change. You're 100% correct. But I really like the statement that Mad Lions gave by winning and Rogue gave by making it all the way to the finals in the LEC.
Yeah, absolutely. And so much young talent between these two rosters. I mean, Mad Lions, your biggest veteran is Humanoid. He's only been in the league for like 2 to 3 years at this point. On Rogue, it gets a little bit older. You have Otawame up in the top lane. You also have Hansama down there at AD carry. But overall, it's still young. Like Larson's a young mid laner. Trimby is a new support for them as well. So looking at both these rosters, they're very young overall. They're showing these veterans on G2, your Reckless, your Caps, your Yankos, players who have been around here for many years. Guys, we're here to compete. Yes, we've taken games off you last year. Yes, we've pushed you to your limits here and there, but you end up going out and getting Reckless. You're supposed to be this all-star roster. You're supposed to absolutely defeat everyone here in Europe and just easily walk your way over there to Worlds. And now you finished in 3rd. So G2 getting a lot of criticism, and maybe rightfully so, but I think a lot of praise also should go to Mad Lions and Rogue here. Both teams stepping up to the plate, both teams taking down a champion like G2. Neither one did take down Fnatic, but Fnatic couldn't even make it there. They lost to Schalke. So overall, both the two kings of Europe, the two who have continued to win all the titles over there in the LEC or previously the EU LCS, not even making it to the finals. The young players standing up here, taking the name for themselves. And again, a best of 5. It looked like Rogue was going to go ahead and sweep it after the first 2 games. Mad Lions comes out here, takes it all the way to that 5th game just to win it. Absolutely great stuff there in the LEC. Now, over to the LCS. We have to go to our North American shores as well. We were anticipating a good series. We both predicted 5 games in this one, John. I believe you predicted C9 3-2. I predicted Liquid 3-2. In the end, your prediction is spot on, good sir. Cloud9 did pull the win. Beautiful shirt. See that little 9 right there? 9 is going to be a fun number to touch on because there's another fact around 9. But before we dive in, one major factor with this was Team Liquid was missing Santorin. Now, do I think the series would have ended up different? Do I think Cloud9 would have lost? Probably not. I think Cloud9 was the better team on the day. Sub Santorin in, maybe it's a little bit of a different experience, but overall, I think the substitute jungler for Liquid did fine. Santorin is a great player, but in the end, Perks really came alive in that 5th game. And being the big major difference maker there for C9, the team played extremely well, but Perks able to roam, able to really capitalize on where he needed to get his team ahead, and Cloud9 pull off the win in the end.
Yeah, super exciting. Going the distance all 5 games as well, Joe. We had back-to-back silver scrapes, both in the LEC and in the LCS. That's what you want. You don't want to see a blowout. You don't want to see a 3-0. You might want to see a 3-1, depends upon if you want to have an afternoon later that day or not. But, you want to see the best teams compete at the highest level. In LCS, having Cloud9 and Team Liquid go head-to-head in the finals. A lot of people at the beginning of the split would pick these 2 teams to meet in the finals. It happened a little sloppy on the way there for both teams, but eventually got there into the finals. Cloud9 versus Team Liquid. Cloud9 coming out. I think it's really exciting. Cloud9, that's their 2nd split championship now in a year and a half. You know, Cloud9 fans, pat yourself on the back because that was 6 years prior to that last one. So we're due Cloud9 fans. So just be happy with that. Joey, my only gripe, and it's very selfish. I hate the partnership with Puma because they put out crap championship gear. Not a fan. I don't like the Cloud9 championship hoodie. I don't like the Cloud9 championship shirt. I think it's very basic. I think it's very ugly. I think they could do better. And I think they could do better by going to Adidas or Nike or anybody else not named Puma. That's my 2 cents. Sorry for screwing over our soon-to-be Puma sponsorship here on LvLUp and OTN. I do apologize for that, but that's my only gripe.
Well, forward it on over to Papa Jack, John, and see if he can change anything up over there. Last thing to touch on here, again, great series. We went to Silver Scrape, super exciting, super fun. In the end, Perks did earn his price tag, pulling off a nice clutch win there in Game 5. But on top of that, John, another fun number to go with that Cloud9 number. Perks has now won 9 domestic titles, tying Faker for the record. 9 domestic titles through 2 different leagues. Now, again, most of those won over in Europe. He won a lot of them in the LEC with G2 Esports. But he came over here in his first season with Cloud9, first season in the LCS, and pulled off another domestic win to find that 9th. So now him and Faker are both tied at 9-1 in finals appearances. Perks' only loss is over to Fnatic over there in the LEC, and then Faker, his was to Longzhu in the LCK. So both champions. Faker, anything comparison you can find with Faker, I mean, in any way that I can possibly think of, if you can find a comparison to Faker in League of Legends, you are doing something right in some way or another. So big congratulations to Perks on another win there and tying Faker on that record.
Yeah, now go win 9 in the LCK. And then I'll put you in the same conversation as Faker. I'm just leaving it there. Now, look, I'm not trying to water down the LEC and the LCS. I mean, really, the LCS is watered down. Let's just put it out there first off. The LEC, winning the LEC, yes, I think that is impressive. Winning 8 LEC titles, yes, that is very impressive. Don't get me wrong, but it's still not the LCK. At the end of the day, the LCK is the golden standard. Go to Korea and go win in the LCK. And then I'll put you in the same sentence. No, I'll put you in the same breath as Faker. But until then, I'm sorry. I cannot. Yes, they share a number. That's about it. And it's only a number. I honestly cannot put them in the same boat.
Yeah, I see that. Again, very different quality of leagues. I think LEC, I'm not going to say it's a straight up comparison with the LCK because the LCK and LPL have shown us time and time again that even if an LEC team makes it to the final, they usually get slapped around by an LPL or LCK team. So in the end, it is a tough comparison to make. But winning 9 domestic titles, regardless of the league, regardless of anywhere, that is a huge accomplishment. So big congratulations to Perks there. Whether you want to make the Faker comparison or not, it could just be a record. It could not be anything more than that. It is still a big win. And any way, again, that you can compare to Faker, I think is a win in and of itself. So big congratulations to Cloud9 there, to Mad Lions in the LEC, and to Perks on this wonderful accomplishment. I think that does it today, John. I feel like there was so much we could have covered here and there. We went on some little bit more of a wordy adventure with some of these different things like the investment talk, but it's something that needs to be said based on everything happening on Twitter right now. So to all you podcast listeners, now you know our take on it with some numbers and facts to back it up. Lots of good stuff to look forward to. Like we had said earlier on, potentially a Bloodborne remastered remake coming to PS5 and PC. Should hear more of that soon. Xbox Game Pass possibly to Steam. Couple things to look forward to this week is that Rogue Company update coming out tomorrow. Again, that's Tuesday the 13th for listeners on the podcast version. Capcom with that event on April 15th for Resident Evil Village. And last but not least, Overwatch League action returning later in this week on the 16th as well.
Well, Nation, that will do it for this edition of LvLUp Live. But before you go, head over to patreon.com/OTN. Consider becoming a part of the Overtime Network. In return, you will get access to exclusive content that nobody else in the world can get unless they are a part of the Overtime Network. If you have not already done so, make sure you follow the show here on Twitch to catch the next episode of LvLUp Live. If you listen to the show on our podcast feed, leave us a review. The LvLUp Podcast is available on Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes, and Google Play. We would love to hear from you. In fact, we love to hear from our entire community so much, there are other ways for you to reach out to us. Joey, what are some of those ways?
Absolutely, guys. Head on over to Twitter and find us at LvLUp Live. That is LvLUP Live. In addition to that, you can follow the umbrella company OTN Media on Twitter and Facebook, as well at OTN Media, and on Instagram at OTN_media. Last but not least, hit us up with a follow, maybe even a Twitch Prime sub over here on Twitch. That's twitch.tv/OTN Media. A number of streams throughout the week. LvLUp Podcast. Again, it's on all your podcast catchers. But if you do want to come hang out live in chat, that is Mondays and Thursdays, 8 p.m. Eastern Time.
All right, a friendly reminder again, if you missed last Thursday's episode with BBXH on the show, you are missing out for everything that is holy. Go watch that episode. Available on Twitch and our YouTube channel as well. Nation, that will do it for this edition of LvLUp Live. Make sure you tune in this upcoming Thursday, April 15th, as we cover the latest and greatest in gaming and esports news. Do your ears and eyes a favor. Hit that sub and follow button to know when the next episode of LvLUp Live is ready for your viewing and listening pleasures. We'll catch you all on Thursday. Have a fantastic week. Remember, be nice to your fellow gamers online. And as always, level up.